Some years ago, at the height of the communist persecution behind the Iron Curtain, a speaker had demanded that all the village people be present in the middle of the village, where he was to give a speech and harangue them on the truths and glories of communism. They all listened patiently and courteously. About an hour later, when he'd come to the end of his atheistic speech, full of eloquence and power, there was a slight pause, and from the back of the crowd was heard, "Christos proskresi!" And the whole crowd immediately took up the response. This year, the whole of the church, with both its lungs, has been breathing fully in these last days, and the air has been full of grace. I was able to pick up, almost immediately after it happened, footage of the encounter between heaven and earth yesterday. Hagios. God, once again, was faithful to his appointment. It took me back to the picture in the Sistine Chapel, where Adam is seen somewhat limp, but the point of contact with God the Father is the index finger. And one sees the suggestion of something like voltage coming from the finger of the Creator and pointing and saying with a spark, "Be!" That same spark, that same contact between the finger of God and the finger of man happened yesterday in the Holy Sepulchre. It actually is very touching because we know what happens and the delicacy of our God. The Holy Light comes usually in a blue foam from the depth of the Holy Sepulchre where the Lord was laid, through the chink that one can still see there, and dances in the air for a while. It can change colour, but it usually is blue-green, but blue mainly. And then, and this is the delicate bit, to allow man to touch his God, it coalesces in a column from which the calm, aged patriarch, the successor of St. James, lifts his 33 candles and touches, as it were, the power of God, representing the whole of the human race. He's able, therefore, to ignite, or rather God himself ignites these 3 or 33 candles. And at the same time, one can see this acceleration of flashes around the outside. Woof, woof, woof. One can see that there is power in the air. And do you know that it has been picked up that even in the rest of the year, that is picked up? People there have noticed and have picked up on modern means that those same flashes of power are there and they come up. In photography, at night for instance, There's power in that place where this explosion took place on this holy night. And then you know how for the first 7 minutes it doesn't burn. It's miraculous. And then it goes around the whole world. It gets to Ireland, it gets to Dublin. I have a friend who belongs to the Eastern Church, and she gets it from the Eastern Rite in Dublin every year. It gets also precisely to where, for hours on end in this night, is heard, Christos Voskressi. It gets to the Patriarch of Moscow, who presents it to the head of state, one of the most important continents of the world, now made a complete return compared with what it was before. Do you know that towards the end of that terrible regime in Russia, people were on a bus one day, and out of nowhere appeared this old man with the beard sitting next to an atheist. The atheist, for the whole journey, criticized the old regime and Christianity. The old man said nothing until there was an almighty bang. The bus stopped, and everyone on the bus made this sign 3 times, and all he could say was, "Did you see that, young man?" Everyone on the bus had the instinct of faith. And he added, "Before long, the reign of Satan will end over this land." And that it was. We know, by the way, that the Blessed Sacrament was taken down round in secret in the priest's pocket several times round the Kremlin before the end of the regime. And the end was relatively peaceful. Relatively peaceful. God himself intervened. And now it is actually, by law, not allowed to commit public blasphemy in Russia. Whereas RTE can get away with blue murder in Catholic Ireland. I wonder how Enda Kenny would compare right now with other leaders in the world with regard to proclamation of Christian faith in this land of saints and scholars, which at one point held the light of faith alive in the dark ages when Europe became neo-pagan. I was looking at the way in which this miracle of the Holy Fire had been chronicled, recorded over the centuries. You know how when they were coming to the end of the building of the Basilica of Constantine, therefore the end of the persecution, in Jerusalem itself, a prayer was made, pleading that God would indicate his favour. I believe it was a bishop who made it. It's chronicled in history. And that very year in which the Basilica was finished, we talk about the 300s, the light came, and it's come ever since, igniting from heaven the lamps of earth. This flame shares the power, the mysterious power never fully understood or analyzed that left its imprint. Now, I was reading at some length yesterday the studies recently done on the Holy Shroud. It goes in quite some depth into the quite erroneous evidence manipulated by the carbon testing. We know by now that they took a part which was contaminated by a repair. A scientist, a neutral scientist, dying of cancer, wanted to warn mankind that he had proven beyond any doubt that the actual analysis of the tissue at that point indicates quite clearly that it was an expert hand that had wanted to repair the edge of the shroud. And therefore, the carbon dating was dating posterior thread. Now the fact is, and this goes into great detail, it would seem that there were strange things at work in that investigation, which can only presume that there was some higher intelligence pushing very cleverly at people who had a vested interest, and a lot of money changed hands at the end. We're talking about far more than £1 million. In Ireland right now, money exchanges hands when it comes to the reverse of the resurrection, slaughtering children. The same sinister power that was defeated on the cross. This morning, at the crack of dawn, a message came in Romanian. Christos a înviat, the same word as in Greek and in all these languages belonging to the East. And the response for a whole season, not hello, ciao, good morning, good day, but the whole people still by instinct say, he is truly risen, to each other when they meet each other for these 50 days. In certain Catholic countries, culture and faith are hugely intertwined. Now in Ireland, we've relegated only to the inside, the cosmetic and the private, our faith. Why can we not re-enthrone Christ over his whole church, his whole land, his whole creation? We need to proclaim Christ. Why be afraid of making the sign of the cross? Why be afraid of having the crucifix and emblems of our faith visible where we are? We must not be shy of our faith. It's playing the game of the enemy of our faith. We proclaim Christ publicly. I conclude, my friends. Over all the world, because of the union of the date this year, there's been a huge amount of prayer and praise over the planet in this holy night and in this day. I cannot but remember how, when sent to Austria to study German in one of our monasteries, there how faith and culture was still hugely intertwined. Do you know that in the countries there, in Austria and Bavaria, they had wonderful customs. During the vigil, it was dramatized. Over the high altar, things would happen. They would have this massive icon of the risen Christ, wound up, coming out of the altar and reigning over the congregation in glory. And they would pull out the stops. You'd hear sung the Hallelujah chorus of Handel and so on. Faith and culture, able to suggest something of the majesty of our King. Even actually in Wales, they have very little with regard to the external, but boy, do they create an ambit of praise. Why are we shy to sing our worship of God? He deserves the best, and He's given us the means to suggest it. Beauty and harmony, glory and praise, and in our home, Christ enthroned over time, over which He reigns as Alpha and Omega.
πάντα πεπλήρωτε φωτός, ουρανώστε και η γη και τα καταχθόνια. Τώρα όλα γέμισαν φως λοιπόν και ο ουρανός και η γη και ο κάτω κόσμος.